You ever been in a situation where someone did you wrong? I mean, really wrong. They lied on you, betrayed you, broke your trust in ways you never thought possible. And you sat there wondering if they'd ever feel the weight of what they did. Let me tell you something. God doesn't sleep. He sees everything. And when someone sets out to harm you, mistreat you, or take advantage of your kindness, there comes a time when God steps in. You don't have to go looking for revenge. You don't have to plot or scheme to make them feel what you felt. Because when God starts dealing with those who hurt you, it's a process only He controls. Suddenly, doors that were wide open for them start to close. Their plans don't work out the way they expected. The same energy they put out, the deception, the manipulation, the cruelty, it comes back around. And they don't even see it coming. You'll notice something else. That confidence they once had, it starts to fade. The person who once walked around like they were untouchable suddenly isn't so sure anymore. Their own guilt, their own choices start to haunt them. And it doesn't matter how much they try to hide it. Deep down, they feel it. They start to look over their shoulder, wondering if the very same pain they caused will come knocking at their door. And let me tell you this, God has a way of exposing people. Oh, they might have fooled you. They might have convinced everyone around them that they were innocent. But truth has a way of rising to the surface. At first, it's small, little cracks in their story, whispers of doubt in the minds of those who once believed them. But soon, the whole picture becomes clear. And when God reveals the truth, there's no covering it up. Then there's the emptiness. The people who once surrounded them, the ones who laughed with them when they were tearing you down, where are they now? Gone, disappeared. The same crowd they relied on suddenly isn't there anymore. Because when God starts moving, He isolates. He strips away everything they thought they could depend on, and now they're left with nothing but the consequences of their actions. But here's the most important thing. You don't need to be there to watch it happen. You don't need to wait for the moment they fall. That's not your job. Your job is to heal, to grow, to move forward with grace. Because while they're dealing with their own storms, God is lifting you higher. He's preparing a table for you. He's putting you in places they never thought you'd reach. And that's why you don't waste time on bitterness. You let God handle it. So if you've been hurt, if you've been betrayed, if you've been left wondering when justice will come, just know God is already handling it. Keep your heart clean, keep your faith strong, and keep walking forward. Because what's ahead for you, it's far greater than anything they tried to take away. You ever wonder if God really sees it all? If He truly watches what people do behind closed doors? Let me tell you something, He does. Nothing is hidden from Him. The whispers, the backstabbing, the deceitful actions, they think they got away with it, but they didn't. Because God's eyes are everywhere. You may have cried yourself to sleep asking why they hurt you, why they betrayed you, why they walked away with no remorse. But just because they moved on like nothing happened doesn't mean God did. He sees every tear you shed, every moment of pain, every silent prayer when you thought no one was listening. And because He sees, He records. He remembers. The same way He counts the hairs on your head, He counts every injustice done to you, and in due time He responds. Maybe not in the way you expect, maybe not when you want, but He does. It's why you don't need to chase down the people who wronged you. You don't need to demand an apology, don't need to beg for closure, don't need to explain yourself to people who never cared to understand you, because God already knows the truth. And when God knows, He acts. They might seem fine now, laughing, succeeding, enjoying life like they never did anything wrong, but what you don't see is the weight they carry, the weight of knowing that what they did wasn't right, the weight of knowing that no matter how far they run, they can't escape what's coming, because when God deals with someone, it's not instant, it's a process. He lets them think they're in control, lets them believe they've won. Then, little by little, He starts removing the things they relied on. Opportunities dry up, relationships fall apart, the confidence they once had turns into anxiety, and the people who once cheered them on start pulling away. You see, when God is involved, there is no escaping justice. He doesn't need your help to make things right. He doesn't need you to expose them, doesn't need you to fight battles he already won. All you have to do is trust. Trust that he saw, trust that he heard, and trust that in his perfect timing, he will move in a way that leaves no doubt, because what's done in darkness always comes to light. Always. Do you ever feel the urge to make them feel what you felt, to show them they messed with the wrong one? That's human nature. When someone does you wrong, your first instinct is to strike back, to make them pay. But let me tell you something. Revenge is a burden you were never meant to carry. It'll drain you, it'll consume your thoughts, steal your peace, and turn you into someone you're not. And the truth is, no matter what you do, you will never make them feel the exact pain they put you through. That's why you have to let it go. Not because they deserve your forgiveness, not because they should get away with it, but because you deserve freedom. When you hold on to anger, when you replay the hurt in your mind, when you keep waiting for the day they suffer, you're still giving them power over you. But the moment you step back, the moment you surrender it to God, something shifts. Because when God handles it, he does it in a way that no human plan could ever accomplish. See, revenge is limited. You might embarrass them, you might hurt their feelings, you might even get an apology. But that doesn't change who they are. That doesn't heal what they broke in you, and that sure doesn't stop them from doing it to someone else. But when God deals with them, he reaches places you can't. He touches their mind, their spirit, their conscience. He disrupts their peace. He makes them come face to face with the very thing they tried to avoid, accountability. That's why you don't need to fight battles that don't belong to you. You don't need to chase justice. You don't need to prove a point. Because the more you focus on getting back at them, the more distracted you become from what's ahead of you. And that's exactly what they want. To see you stuck, bitter, wasting your energy on them. Don't give them that satisfaction. Let God handle it. Let him work in ways you can't see. Because when he does, it won't just be a lesson. They will know without a doubt that they messed with the wrong person. You ever notice how some people move through life like they're untouchable? Like no matter what they do, they always land on their feet. They hurt people, they manipulate, they take advantage, and somehow they keep winning. But let me tell you something. Just because their life looks good on the outside doesn't mean God's not working behind the scenes. Because when God starts dealing with someone, he starts closing doors they never thought would close. At first, they don't even notice it. They keep moving like nothing's changed. The same confidence, the same arrogance, the same sense of control. But then, little by little, things stop working the way they used to. That promotion they were expecting, it never comes. That relationship they thought was solid, it starts to crack. The opportunities that once came so easily, suddenly, they're nowhere to be found. And it confuses them because they were so sure they had it all figured out, so sure they could treat people any kind of way and still be blessed. But what they didn't realize is that when you move through life hurting people, eventually that door of grace starts to close. And it's not just about losing things. It's about losing favor. You see, when God removes his hand, it doesn't always look like disaster right away. Sometimes it just looks like struggle. Things that used to be effortless become difficult. The influence they once had starts to fade. People stop returning their calls. Deals that seemed guaranteed suddenly fall through, and they don't understand why. They don't realize that it's God stepping in, reminding them that they don't control their own destiny. Because when you build success on the foundation of other people's pain, it's only a matter of time before it crumbles. And here's the thing. You don't have to be around to see it. You don't have to check their social media, don't have to ask mutual friends what's going on. You just have to trust that the same God who saw your suffering sees everything else too. And when he decides it's time, no amount of effort, no amount of connections, no amount of planning will be able to keep those doors open. Because when God closes a door, no man can reopen it. You ever met someone who walks around like they're untouchable? Like they can do whatever they want, say whatever they want, and never feel a thing? They hurt you, lied to you, disrespected you, and then carried on like it was nothing. No guilt, no remorse, no second thoughts. But let me tell you something. No one escapes their own conscience forever. They might smile in public, they might laugh like they have no worries, but deep down, when the noise fades, when the distractions are gone, that's when it hits them. Because here's the truth. When God starts dealing with them, their confidence starts to crack. At first, it's subtle. They'll brush it off, ignore it, keep moving like nothing's wrong. But over time, they start feeling it. That nagging feeling in the back of their mind, that uneasiness in their spirit, that moment when they lay in bed at night, and for the first time, they start questioning themselves. Was I wrong? Did I really do that? Was it worth it? And let me tell you, those thoughts don't just go away. They grow, they spread, and before they know it, they're battling something they can't shake off. See, people think punishment is always something you can see, losing money, losing friends, losing opportunities. But one of the worst things God can do to a person is turn their own mind against them. When the very confidence that carried them starts to fade, when the boldness they once had turns into doubts, when they start second-guessing themselves, wondering if they've messed up in ways they can't fix, that's God working, that's God whispering, reminding them that they didn't get away with anything. And here's the thing. There's no escape from it. They can try to drown it out with distractions, with new relationships, with fake happiness, but it won't work. Because when God is dealing with them, He doesn't let them find peace. He doesn't let them rest in their wrongdoing. And no matter how much they pretend on the outside, on the inside, they know they're not as untouchable as they thought. They know that something is shifting, and for the first time, they have to face the truth. You ever notice how some people thrive on attention? How they move through life feeding off of others, off their pain, their kindness, their loyalty, using people like stepping stones, never thinking twice about the damage they leave behind. They get away with it for a while, maybe even for years. But then something happens. Suddenly, the people who once cheered for them aren't clapping anymore. The friends who once stood by their side start pulling away. The ones who once supported them begin to see them for who they really are. And that's when it starts to sink in. They're alone. Because when God starts dealing with them, He doesn't just remove opportunities, He removes people. The ones who once believed in them, gone. The ones who defended them, silent. And it confuses them because they were so used to having an audience, so used to controlling the narrative. But what they don't realize is that God is stripping away their power layer by layer. He's exposing the truth, not by force, but by allowing people to see what was always there. The manipulation, the lies, the selfishness, it all comes to light. And once people see it, they can't unsee it. And here's the thing, they won't understand it at first. They'll blame everyone else. They'll say people switched up on them, that others are jealous, that nobody is loyal anymore. But deep down in the quiet moments, they know. They know they created this. They know that what's happening isn't random. It's a response to the way they treated people, to the way they took and never gave, to the way they burned bridges and never looked back. And that loneliness, that isolation, it's not by accident. It's God giving them time to reflect, time to sit with themselves, time to finally realize that the problem was never everyone else, it was them. And no amount of blaming, no amount of running, no amount of pretending will change that. Because when God is involved, He doesn't just deal with the symptoms. He goes straight to the source. And when that happens, there's nowhere left to hide. You ever notice how some people walk around like they're untouchable, like nothing can shake them? They build their lives on pride, on arrogance, on the belief that they can do whatever they want without consequences. They think they control their own destiny, that their success is purely their own doing. But then something shifts. Suddenly, the things they once took for granted start slipping through their fingers. The confidence they had starts to waver. The control they thought they had begins to crumble. And they don't know why. Because when God starts dealing with them, He doesn't always do it with a loud, dramatic fall. Sometimes He lets them feel their own instability. The things they once leaned on for strength whether it was money, status, relationships, or influence, start to feel shaky. They start making mistakes they never used to make. Their decisions backfire. Their plans unravel. And they don't understand it because on the surface, nothing seems wrong. They're still moving, still talking, still pretending like everything is fine. But deep down, they feel it, that weight, that uncertainty, that fear that maybe, just maybe, they aren't as powerful as they thought. And let me tell you, when pride starts to crack, it's a slow, painful process. Because they've spent so much time convincing themselves that they were always in control, that they were the reason for their own success, that they could manipulate situations, people, and outcomes to fit their desires. But when God steps in, He lets them see the truth. They were never in control to begin with. He lets them taste what it feels like to not have all the answers, to not be able to fix everything, to feel powerless in ways they never have before. And that's when reality sets in. That's when they start to see that the strength they relied on wasn't real strength at all, that the confidence they carried was built on sand, that everything they took pride in was never really theirs to hold on to. And when that realization comes, it shakes them to their core, because for the first time they see what they refused to see before, that the power they thought they had was never theirs, that no matter how high they built themselves up, they were never above God's reach. And now they have no choice but to face it. You ever seen someone who thought they could just move through life doing whatever they wanted, hurting whoever they pleased and never looking back? They thought they were untouchable, thought they could throw dirt on your name, betray your trust, break your spirit, and walk away like nothing happened. But what they didn't realize is that when God steps in, He has a way of turning the very things that used to hurt you into the same things that bring them down. Because there comes a moment when everything they once used against you stops working. The lies they spread, they come back around. The doors they tried to shut in your face, now they're the ones knocking on doors that won't open. The people they turned against you, now those same people see the truth for themselves, and suddenly the world isn't so kind to them anymore. Suddenly they're standing in the very storm they thought they had escaped. And here's the thing, when God deals with them, He doesn't just remove their power, He makes them feel what they made you feel. They thought they could humiliate you, make you question yourself, strip away your confidence, and keep going like they were untouchable. But now, they're the ones feeling that weight. Now they're the ones dealing with whispers behind their back, with people walking away, with opportunities disappearing without explanation. And they don't understand why. They think it's just a string of bad luck, a rough season, but deep down they know. They know that what's happening isn't random. It's the weight of everything they've done catching up to them. See, when you carry yourself with integrity, when you walk in truth, you don't have to chase justice. Justice will find you. And when someone tries to break you, thinking they'll never have to answer for it, they forget one thing: God sees everything. And He doesn't just balance the scales, He makes sure they feel the full weight of their actions, not to destroy them, but to make them see, to make them understand that they weren't as untouchable as they thought, that the pain they caused wasn't just forgotten, that the very things they used to hurt others will become the very things that humble them. And when that moment comes, when they finally realize that they didn't get away with anything, that's when they'll know. That's when they'll understand that God had the final say all along. You ever see someone walk around acting like they're untouchable, like they can hurt people, betray trust, manipulate situations, and just keep moving like nothing ever happened? They convince themselves they're too smart, too powerful, too ahead of the game to ever face consequences. But what they don't realize is that when God steps in, He has a way of making sure they see, feel, and understand exactly what they've done. And sometimes He does it in a way that leaves them with nowhere to run. Because when God deals with those who hurt you, He allows their own choices to be the very thing that traps them. At first, they don't notice. They think they're still in control, still calling the shots. They keep moving the same way, thinking they've outsmarted consequences. But what they don't see is the slow unraveling, the small shifts that start closing in around them, The opportunities that once came easy now feel impossible to reach. The people they once manipulated now see through the act. The situations they used to control now slip through their fingers. And when that moment comes, they panic. They start scrambling, trying to fix things, trying to regain control, but nothing works. Because this time, it's not people shutting doors on them, it's God. This time, it's not rumors tearing them down, it's the truth catching up. And they feel it, that sinking feeling, that realization that they are now trapped in the very web they wove for others. They use deception, now they're surrounded by lies they can't escape. They thrived on betrayal, now they don't know who to trust. They stepped on people to get ahead, now they can't find a single hand to pull them back up. And they'll sit there confused, blaming bad luck, blaming other people, blaming everything but the choices they made. But deep down, when the noise fades, they know. They know exactly why things are crumbling. They know exactly why peace is slipping away. See, you don't have to chase revenge. You don't have to waste energy trying to make them see what they did. Because when God deals with someone, He does it in a way they can't ignore. He doesn't just let them feel the pain. They have to sit in it. He lets them experience what it's like to be on the other side, to be the one struggling, to be the one crying out for answers and receiving nothing but silence. And in that silence, they learn. They learn that no matter how far they tried to run, no matter how much they thought they were in control, there was always a higher power watching, always a justice greater than their schemes. And now, they have no choice but to face it. You ever notice how some people think they can just walk through life doing whatever they please, leaving behind a trail of broken trust, hurt hearts, and damaged souls, like none of it will ever catch up to them? They think they're invincible. They think they can step on people, use them, discard them, and keep going without a second thought. But what they don't realize is that when God steps in, He doesn't just stop them, He isolates them. At first, they don't see it. They're still riding the wave of their own ego, still convinced they're in control. But then, one by one, the people they counted on start disappearing. The ones who once laughed at their cruelty, who supported their selfishness, who encouraged their reckless behavior, they start stepping back. The very crowd that once applauded them now sees them for who they really are. And when that happens, something shifts. The invitations stop coming. The calls go unanswered. The people they once manipulated suddenly don't want anything to do with them. And that's when reality starts to set in. Because for so long, they thrived on attention, on control, on always having an audience, always having someone to validate them, always having a group to stand behind them. But now they're alone. Now the same people they took for granted have turned away. And they start asking themselves, what happened? Why is everyone leaving? But deep down, they know. They know that it's not just people walking away, it's God pulling them back. It's God making sure they feel the emptiness they once caused in others. It's God showing them what it's like to reach out and find nothing but silence. And let me tell you, isolation is one of the most powerful ways God deals with someone, because when they're alone, they don't have distractions. They don't have people feeding their ego. They don't have anyone telling them they were right when they were dead wrong. All they have is their own reflection. And for the first time, they have to sit with it. Sit with their choices. Sit with their regrets. Sit with the truth they tried so hard to ignore. And that's when the weight of it all crashes down. That's when they realize that it wasn't just people who walked away. It was God who took away their influence. God who stripped away their false sense of security. God who made sure they would experience firsthand what it feels like to be left behind. And when that moment comes, when they find themselves truly alone, they will have no choice but to face the reality they created. Because God doesn't just deal with them, He makes sure they understand exactly why they're being dealt with. And then comes the final piece, the part they never saw coming. Because up until now, they might have thought they could fix it, thought they could manipulate their way back, find a shortcut, talk their way out of the mess they created. But what happens when none of it works? What happens when God makes sure they feel the weight of their own destruction? He lets them watch as the very things they once took for granted start to fall apart right in front of them. The success they bragged about, the position they used to elevate themselves over others, the influence they wielded so carelessly, slowly it begins to crumble. And not because someone took it from them, not because they were betrayed the way they betrayed others, but because God removed his hand. He let them see what happens when you build a life on deception, manipulation, and selfish ambition. They thought they had built something permanent, thought they were untouchable, but now they stand in the ruins of their own making. And the most painful part? They can't stop it. No matter how hard they try to hold it together, no matter how much they scheme, no matter how desperately they reach for what's slipping through their fingers, it's gone. And that's when they realize something terrifying. The destruction wasn't caused by anyone else. It wasn't someone getting revenge. It wasn't bad luck. It was God making sure they understood, making sure they felt every ounce of what they put others through. Because God doesn't just deal with those who hurt you. He dismantles everything they built on a foundation of wrongdoing. He removes their safety net. He takes away the illusions they wrap themselves in. And when they're standing there, surrounded by the ashes of what they thought would last forever, they have no choice but to reflect. To look back at the moments they ignored, every warning, every sign, every chance to do right. And in that moment, when there's nothing left to hold on to, they finally understand. God was always watching. He saw what they did, he saw what they ignored, and now he's making sure they see it too. So, you don't have to fight, you don't have to chase revenge, lose sleep over what they did, or waste energy trying to make them see the pain they caused. Because when God steps in, he handles it in ways you never could. He lets them feel every consequence, every loss, every moment of emptiness until they have no choice but to face the truth. And while they sit in the wreckage of their own making, you will rise, you will heal, you will move forward with peace, knowing that justice was never in your hands, it was always in God's. Let them watch as you thrive, as you walk in favor, as you live a life untouched by their actions. Because when God deals with those who hurt you, he doesn't just bring them down, he lifts you up. And that is all the victory you will ever need.